This is a story of systemic corruption centered in Canton, Mass. That stretches all the way to Governor Healy, our former Attorney General. Viewer discretion is advised. I'm Rory Woods. In 2003, at age 36, having had a successful run as a remodeling contractor, I decided to get serious about having a family of my own. I refocused on dating men, given I am bisexual and things simply were not working out long term for me with women. In January of 2005, I bought a house on the historic Hadley Town Common and began renovating it. I had no roommates, no landlord, no distractions. My meditation practice grew deeper. I started to remember a childhood sexual assault in Canton, where I lived as a young child. But it was vague and disturbing. I volunteered enthusiastically at the North Hadley Church, knowing I would need extended family to keep an eye out for me and the children I was planning. I grew up as an adoptee. The family culture was one of scapegoating me at every opportunity. When I reached adulthood, I tried to change the toxic family culture, but they refused to change, doubling down. So I moved on. I dated Buddy, then Jose, and Jake. Then I met Rob. The river ran between our houses. Rob died tragically in a single-car accident after leaving the shop late one night in thick fog. My grief further deepened my meditation practice. The events of 1973 came into clearer focus. I had been gang raped in Canton, in the tent temporarily set up in the backyard of the Joneses, directly across the street from where I lived, at 20 Patriots Drive. I was 6 years old, fresh out of kindergarten. About a dozen teenage boys rode their bikes into our neighborhood from Paul Street and parked their bikes at the Joneses. They chased me and a few other kids down and marched us into the tent under the guise of playing cops and robbers. The oldest Jones boys, Georgie and Eddie, had gone camping over the Memorial Day weekend. They were in the house, listening to music. The strange boys pulled down my pants and yanked at my shirt. They said if I told anyone, they would kill me. At supper time, I was freed and sent home. My parents thought my crying was because they were divorcing. Mrs. Leonard had called me into her house earlier that day to ask if my parents were getting a divorce, which was my greatest fear. The next day, the strange boys returned. They made me suck their peepees. They said I could spit in the tent, but I was taught not to spit, except I was choking. Again, my life was threatened. On the third day, I hid in our basement with my brother, but our mother said we had to go outside. It was nice weather. Moments later, I was back in the tent, this time on my hands and knees, naked. I was blindfolded and gagged, but the violations were so violent, the blindfold kept falling down. It was retied between perpetrators. In the end, I collapsed. I was left tied to a tree, the tape stolen from Plymouth Rubber ripped from my mouth as my dad pulled into our driveway. He heard me crying softly, hyperventilating, and came to untie me. My dad demanded to know why I was tied to a tree. I could hardly speak. I tried to catch my breath, but I could barely walk, and he was dragging me back across the street. Then he blamed my almost 8-year-old brother, demanding, "Why didn't you protect your sister?" My brother was so ashamed, he never looked kindly upon me again, to this day. I had not only lost my innocence, I had lost my best friend. In November, my parents separated, us kids moving with our mom to Foxborough. I was relieved to be leaving Canton. I had spent the past several months in fear for my life, constantly on the lookout for those mean boys. Fast forward to home ownership and nesting. It wasn't going as planned. The clearer the memories came, the more I disassociated, losing stretches of time. I alternated between mild mania and depression. I sought assistance from the Massachusetts State Fund for Victims, but I was told it was only for violent crime like muggings and shootings. I kid you not. Soon after, I was being foreclosed. But the Massachusetts Attorney General, Martha Coakley, and her assistant, Maura Healy, were leading the charge against predatory lenders. I was notified I had the predatory loan. I sought more information, but was blocked. I was simply told there had been a consent order with Barclays. I had no relationship with Barclays, but I got crickets. I was being stonewalled. I reported the gang rape to the Canton police, but was told there was a statute of limitations, and there was nothing they could do. "Take care of yourself," they said. In 2012, I was summoned to my mother's deathbed. She said she should have kept me away from the Joneses, that house full of boys. She said she had taken care of me in her will, but my siblings made sure I was cut out of it. During this time, I was being sued by abutters of my rental property, Mickey and Cora Long. They had encroached the boundary and were trying to steal my entire property by adverse possession. The land court judge, Charles Trombley was going out of his way to prejudice the case against me, conducting hearings like a free-for-all, letting Mickey Long shout over me. This gave Trombley the cover of plausible deniability. The Massachusetts government actors, Coakley and Healy, Trombley, the Canton detectives and police chief, D.A. Michael Morrissey, they all wanted to silence me, to completely demoralize me, to bankrupt me, which they did in 2018. In 2021, during late May, I was visiting with an attorney friend who asked what was wrong. Apparently, I had disassociated again. I explained my trauma anniversary. The friend said the law had changed, that I should report it again. And so I did. Again, I was told there was a statute of limitations, nothing could be done. The Canton detective seemed frustrated and suggested I contact the AG's office directly. I did, and was told to go through the DA. I did that, and was referred by the Norfolk DA's office to the Springfield DA's office, given I now live in Western Mass. It was just another runaround. The gatekeepers each gave me the smackdown. The Massachusetts government administrators are a bunch of corrupt, cowardly thugs. They have engaged in endless gaslighting, in courtrooms and otherwise. They have prosecuted over 50 cases of lawfare against me, and now they're trying to jail me for intervening by civil disobedience against the lawfare and deed theft of an elderly gentleman, my friend Alton King. Rob Fields of the Western Housing Court and Elizabeth D. Katz of the Bankruptcy Court conspired to steal title to Alton's $1 million house in Longmeadow while he was vulnerable, fighting cancer after the demise of his marriage due to predatory lending. It was the same bad actors and the same pattern used against me in 2018. Chapter 7 trustees Stephen Weiss, Joseph B. Collins, and attorney Andrea O'Connor worked together to steal whatever I had left, including my honeybee hive patent. On October 12, 2022, I brought live honeybee hives to Alton's in Longmeadow as his guest prior to the Hampton sheriffs taking unlawful possession of his house. As I started to move my hives into place to forage on Alton's flowering landscaping, I was tackled by a sheriff, thrown to the ground, with a knee pressed between my shoulders, compressing my cancerous breast. 2 more sheriffs wrenched my arm into a stress hold, damaging my rotator cuff. They refused me my phone call for 7 hours, which I never got, actually, and then released me in downtown Springfield after hours, injured, with no phone, no wallet, no car, no keys, and no knowledge of what they had done with my dog or my honeybee hives. This was all part of their psychological warfare. A full week after the incident, more than 300 news outlets vilified me as the bee attacker throughout the English-speaking world. This made me unemployable and ineligible for an apartment. It was an obvious coordinated attack, given it was stale news after 7 days. On March 3, 2025, Chief Justice Kevin Maltby of the Springfield District Court had me arrested in open court, even though I was nonviolent. He demanded I sign a vague document, which I declined. A hot mic recorded a sidebar conversation of him a few weeks earlier, telling my public defender, an ADA Blake McConnell, that he was planning to have me committed to a mental health facility by order of Dr. Burt. They're trying to jail me for 8 years, with multiple assault and battery charges because a few crooked sheriffs got a few honeybee stings after they tackled me on my trailer during a fraudulent eviction in which the fraud closing entity had a cease and desist order from FHFA, the Federal Housing Finance Agency. Our founders did not risk their lives, limbs, and loved ones so we can be savaged by tyrannical bureaucrats who steal our property, our income streams, our health, and our livelihoods, who eat out our very substance. Indeed, that is exactly what our founders fought against. Our United States Constitution is the greatest guarantee against tyrannical overlords known to this modern world. These corrupt judges, clerks, community organizers, attorneys, law enforcement, administrators, these thugs need to be jailed, disgorged of ill-gotten gains with damages claims, and tried for treason. All of them. To recap, I reported the gang rape of myself as a child to the state, and soon after was being foreclosed. No meaningful investigation was ever conducted. Now that I'm blowing the whistle on deed theft, title laundering, mortgage fraud, and tax evasion by government actors, they all want to silence me. But keep in mind, swamps are great cleansing mediums. Even Canton can be recovered.